Hey out there, fellow YouTubeites. It's me, Bradford, your carnivore curmudgeon. Yep, still a real carnivore. Nope, still not really a curmudgeon. Well, most of the time anyway. And it was a busy weekend, which of course had some delicious food included in it. But I'm going to take you along on the journey that I had with some smoked lamb, some honeydews, not the fruity kind, and lots of sweat. My goodness, it was hot this weekend. But to get it started, I planned to smoke this leg of lamb that I actually bought back at Easter time when it was on sale. And this seemed to be a good weekend for that because I had plenty of time. So before I started any of the honeydew projects, meaning of course, honey, would you please do this, and honey, would you please do that, I needed to get this leg of lamb seasoned up, and I kept it very simple. All I did for this was, first I let it sit out for about an hour, and then I wiped it dry, and then I gave it a liberal coating of salt. Used Redmond's salt. It's just turned into my favorite salt, so I've been using that a lot. And some fresh cracked pepper. It just pairs really well with lamb for my taste preferences. I know sometimes many of the carnivore community do not use pepper, but for certain dishes I do like to also pepper my meat. And then I also put on some garlic powder. And I didn't have any fresh garlic. Another great way to do this is just to make little slices in the meat and put fresh garlic in. Again, for my taste preferences, garlic and lamb just go together wonderfully. And I will often cut lamb up into little bite-sized pieces and fry it in a pan with garlic butter, with homemade garlic butter. But for smoking this, just these three ingredients: salt, pepper, and some garlic powder. And I let this sit for, I think it was almost 2 hours before I put it in the smoker. And I have a very simple electric Cuisinart smoker. I do like the Cuisinart products. They seem to do very well, especially for their price point. But before I got that started, it was time to start on this little project. Also a Cuisinart product. This little stand used to hold my Cuisinart grill. And I had two Cuisinart grills that fit on this stand that I went through before they just self-destructed. And they don't make that model anymore. So I had the stand and I didn't want to waste it. And I found myself with a perfectly good pallet that I got from work. We had a new table delivered. It was delivered on this pallet. And I hate buying wood and I hate wasting wood. So I had a bright idea. I thought I would just make a little stand to put my Otto Wilde Grill on top of my old Cuisinart stand. And speaking of hating the waste of perfectly good wood, I had this bed rail that's been sitting in the corner of my garage for probably 6 years. And I took it apart to make a platform for my little project using the handy dandy tailgate of my truck with my two favorite stickers, my Meateater sticker and my special made for me only bacon on board sticker. Back to that bed rail. It's been taking up room in our garage for so long, as I said, and I always figured I might find a use for it. I'm glad I did. I probably should have thrown it away, but I don't know. There's something about perfectly good pieces of wood that I hate throwing away. Perfectly good wood. I mean, never let it go to waste. So I trimmed it up to make a couple of slats, and after all that time in the corner of the garage, it finally proved worth its while. Did I mention it was hot? I had to keep wiping everything down because it kept sweating all over everything. So I had to wipe this rail down before I put a couple of beads of caulk. I didn't have any glue that would match well with gluing metal to wood, but all I needed was just a little tacky something. So I put a couple of beads of this caulk into the grooves before I set these foundation panels down. I don't know why I do this to myself.
It's hot.
And these little tabs were on there to hold the grill that it was designed for into place. But I took them off and decided to put them on the bottom to hold the whole thing to the platform. And it was so hot, I thought it was important to let you know that I did drink a lot of water that day. Probably drank 6 or 7 of these bottles of water. And I also, half of the time, put in these Keto Chow electrolytes. There's no endorsement here. There's no money involved in this video. This is just my little blathering on. But I have found that this Keto Chow helps me from getting cramped, which I have a tendency to do because of how profusely I sweat on everything. Next, I took this pallet and I just cut out the platform. All I had to do was cut out the size I needed and then remove some screws from those 2x4s that you see there and just reposition them. It really, gosh, it couldn't have been easier. It was just a perfect little box for what I needed it for. And there's the object of my construction affection, the Otto Wilde Grill, right there sitting right on top of my little freezer, and the whole point and purpose of this project, so that I don't have to keep moving it around from place to place when I want to use it. Love this little gas-powered thing, 1500 degrees, a little bit of a learning curve, but once you understand how to use this thing, it makes some really amazing steaks. So I figured if I'm going to use it a lot, I might as well make it as convenient as I can. And remember those little paddles? Now I'm putting them on here so that this whole stand stays on the furniture dolly that I have to wheel it in and out of the garage. And yes, all those drops over there are me dripping all over everything. And it was time to shift gears for a few minutes. So after cleaning up real quick, I turned my attention to this leg of lamb, and it had been sitting out for a couple of hours, and it was time to put it into the smoker. And I have this external temperature probe set up. I'm looking for 140 degrees on the thickest, deepest part of this leg of lamb, and it's going to take probably somewhere between 3 and 4 hours to get it to the point that I'm ready to take it out. In the meantime, project number 2 on the honey-do list. I have a deck I'm trying to enclose in the back of the house, but first I have to get all of this drainage stone, which is in 50-pound bags, and carry it around to the back. So, you know, if you ever get tired of all the flat bellies that have their YouTube channels and they're 20 years old and they spend about seemingly 26 hours a day in the gym, just keep in mind that even at our older ages, for those of you who are older like me, we can find ways to work our bodies without having to go to the gym all the time. So this was project number 2, as I said, and I had 30 bags of this rock to move. And I'm not going to kid you, it took its toll on me because it was hot. Did I mention it was hot? But I did get it done. I found if I carried 2 bags at once, that by the halfway point, I could start carrying 1 bag at once, and it seemed really light. Funny how it works that way. And if any of you are wondering how many times I wonked my noggin under the deck there, well, I lost track after I blacked out the 4th time. Not really. Okay, back to the leg of lamb. I had that temperature set for 140, and that timer let me know when it reached 140, and it was time to pull this thing and let it sit on the counter for a while. And I got to tell you, it smelled amazing around my house, both in the driveway and in the garage where some of that delicious, meaty, smoky smell wafted into the garage. In fact, it lingered there for a while. It was not unpleasant at all. But I pulled it out, and then it was time to let it rest before carving it up.
Oh my goodness, that does not suck.
I was going to make a bad joke about this leg of lamb counting sheep so that it could get to rest for a couple of hours, but I couldn't quite pull it together. I think it was the heat. So while it did rest, I decided I was going to paint that little box top that I put on top of that stand, project number 1, just to make it all one color and not so raw looking. I thought about putting some shelving paper on it, but it really didn't even need that. And then after about 45 minutes, I came back in and it was time to carve this thing up. And man, it was just the perfect rare, medium rare that makes lamb especially unctuous. I had several bites along the way, and it was just perfect. It's hard to keep your hands out of it when you're carving it like this because it's warm, but it's still not overcooked. And if you haven't tried lamb, if you're a little anxious about giving it a try, roll the dice one time. Even if you don't smoke it, just cook it in the oven. Just don't overcook it, and I think you'll be surprised at just how beautiful it really can taste. I'm going to save that bone that was in there for my daughter's dog. Can't give it to my dog because that knucklehead will swallow it whole. Can't trust him with a bone. So her dog has a little more sense when it comes to bones. I'm going to save that for him. But there it is. I mean, again, give it a try. It's not that expensive, especially if you can find it on sale. This is going to feed my wife and I. I gave a bunch of it to my daughter and her husband and their kids. This is probably, even what I had left will probably feed my wife and I for, I don't know, 3 days if we only eat it, if we only eat lamb. Here's the final product of my little Cuisinart stand project for my Otto Wilde Grill. And that's what it looks like there underneath the Otto Wilde. Can't wait to throw a couple of steaks in there and enjoy them. And here's a quick look at the finished product. Not the enclosed product, but the finished gravel product. Moved my trash cans down under the deck as well. Put a little platform under there. And that was my weekend. And I hope you enjoyed a little look into a busy weekend. Did I mention that it was hot? Well, anyway, thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.